Hey, you ever just feel like you're constantly fighting for your own focus?
Oh, definitely.
Like your phone, it just has this, I don't know, magnetic pull, always dragging you away from what you actually want to be doing.
Yeah, the thing you need to be doing.
Exactly. You're trying to get in the zone, maybe for work, but your brain just feels like ping pong balls,
Yeah.
right? And social media is always calling.
That constant little itch to just tap, scroll, check again.
Does that sound familiar to you listening? I bet it does.
It's pretty much the standard struggle these days, isn't it? We're swimming in stuff designed to grab our attention.
Totally. And well, that brings us right to our deep dive today. This idea of a dopamine detox. We're going to look at it particularly through the lens of Thibaut Meurisse's book.
Right. He positions it as like a potential way back, a way to get some control over our focus in this crazy, distracting world.
So maybe before we jump to the detox itself, we should quickly touch on dopamine, just so we're all on the same page.
Good idea. So dopamine,
Hmm.
it's a neurotransmitter, chemical messenger in the brain. Most people link it to pleasure, reward.
Yeah, the feel-good chemical.
Exactly. But it's more complex than just that. It's also super important for motivation, for learning, even for like wanting to seek out new things.
Okay. And Meurisse's whole argument is that our modern lives have kind of overloaded this system.
That's the core idea. Think about it. Smartphones, endless feeds, streaming everything. It's all engineered to give us these little dopamine jolts nonstop.
Little micro rewards constantly firing. I saw this stat. It was kind of shocking. The average person checks their phone, what, like 96 times a day?
Wow. It's,
right.
Yeah. Almost every 10 minutes if you're awake. That constant stimulation, Reese argues, it have a downside.
So our mission today is to really get into Meurisse's ideas about this dopamine detox. What's he actually proposing? What does he think the benefits are?
And importantly, we also need to look at what the science says, the critiques. We've looked at the research. The goal here is to give you the info so you can make your own informed choices.
Okay, let's start with what Meurisse calls the dark side of dopamine. He really paints a picture of how companies, platforms, they're actively using dopamine to, well, steal our focus.
Yeah, and he connects it directly to money, doesn't he? Attention is the commodity.
Exactly. Your focus, your eyeballs, that's valuable. He points to things like TikTok, Instagram. They're masters at creating these reward loops.
Oh, completely. You post something, you wait for the likes, the comments.
Yeah.
That anticipation, then the notification hits. Boom, dopamine.
And it makes you want to go back for more. Keeps you scrolling. How many times have you just meant to check one thing and then like 45 minutes later?
Guilty. It's designed for that. And Meurisse says this constant chasing of the next hit, this sensory input overload, it becomes a problem.
How so? What's the consequence of that overload?
Well, the idea is that our brains adapt. They get used to this high level of stimulation. So over time, you might need more intense stuff to get the same feeling, the same reward. Your baseline shifts.
Ah, okay. So you become kind of desensitized.
That's the argument. And here's the kicker. This makes those low stimulation activities the important ones, like deep work, focusing on a big project, maybe even just having a quiet chat feel, well, boring.
Because I don't give you that instant dopamine rush.
Precisely. They feel dull in comparison. And that makes it way harder to stick with your long-term goals when your brain's screaming for the easy hit.
Right. That makes sense. If the quiet stuff feels boring, you're less likely to do it. Okay, so that sets the stage. Now, this term, dopamine detox, you mentioned it can be a bit tricky. What does Meurisse actually mean?
Yeah, he's pretty clear on this. It's definitely not about trying to eliminate dopamine. That's impossible, biologically speaking. And unhealthy, too. We need dopamine for basic functions, motivation, movement.
Okay, so it's not zero dopamine.
No. His idea is more about intentionally stepping back, just temporarily, from all those super high stimulation activities, giving your brain a break, basically.
Like hitting a reset button to let your sensitivity recalibrate.
That's a good way to put it. Recalibrating what you find rewarding, letting simpler things feel good again.
Okay, that clarifies it. And he proposes different ways to do this, right? Different levels.
Yep, 3 levels. He starts with the beginner detox. This is usually suggested for 24 hours.
Okay, what does that involve?
So for those 24 hours, no screens. Phones, computers, TV, tablets off limits. Also, no social media, no junk food, sugary processed stuff, no unnecessary online shopping, things like that. Basically, cut out the obvious high dopamine triggers.
Wow. Okay, no screens is a big one for most people. What can you do?
He allows for healthy meals, real food, exercise is good, reading a physical book, meditating, going for a walk in nature, journaling like with actual pen and paper, and having real face-to-face conversations. Challenging, definitely, but sounds doable for a day, maybe? What's the next step up? That's the intermediate detox. Again, 24 hours. Here, you cut out everything from the beginner level, plus all food, so you're fasting. Also, no reading, no music, and no conversations.
Whoa. Okay, that's intense. What's left? What are you allowed?
Very little. Just water, gentle walking, writing like journaling, presumably, and meditation. It's much more about internal focus.
Seriously, stripped back. And the final level.
The advanced detox. Again, 24 hours. This one is basically complete isolation, no external inputs, nothing to do but sit with yourself and your thoughts.
Okay, that sounds extremely challenging. Does Meurisse give examples of people actually doing this and benefiting?
He does. He talks about an entrepreneur named Jamie. Jamie tried the beginner detox.
And how did it go?
Apparently, the first few hours were tough. Really felt that pull to check the phone. But later in the day, Jamie went for a walk, and Meurisse describes this shift. Like, Jamie started noticing small details in the park, really seeing things in a way they hadn't in ages.
Interesting. More present, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the next day, back at work, Jamie reported feeling much clearer mentally, more focused, more able to just be in the task at hand.
That feeling of presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something a lot of us probably crave. So thinking about Jamie's experience and Meurisse's ideas, and maybe pulling in some broader research too, what are the potential upsides here? What benefits might you see?
Well, Meurisse highlights a few key things. One is regaining sensitivity to simpler pleasures. You know, really enjoying a book again, or conversation, or just nature, without needing something louder or faster.
Okay, resensitization. What else?
Improved focus and attention span. Makes
Yeah.
sense, right? If you give your brain a break from constant switching, it might get better at sustained concentration. He also talks about enhanced self-awareness.
How so?
By removing the usual distractions, you become more aware of your own habits, your cravings, what your mind automatically reaches for. Some people also report feeling less anxious and having a greater sense of, intention about how they use their time.
And didn't the literature we looked at kind of echo some of this, even if they don't call it dopamine detox?
It did, yeah. The research review noted that people who follow similar practices, they called it dopamine fasting-like ideologies, often report things like reduced impulsive behavior, better focus, and feeling less overwhelmed.
So there seems to be something happening behaviorally, even if the name or the exact brain mechanism is debated.
Exactly. The observable outcomes seem to align, at least somewhat, with what Meurisse describes.
Okay, so if someone listening is thinking, maybe I should try this, how does Meurisse suggest going about it? Any practical tips?
Yeah, he definitely recommends starting small. Don't jump into the advanced level first thing. Maybe try just a 6-hour detox on a weekend.
Ease into it. Makes sense.
And prepare your space.
Yeah.
Get rid of temptations beforehand. Hide the phone, uninstall the apps temporarily, whatever works for you. He also suggests finding an accountability buddy.
Oh, that's a good one. Doing it with someone else.
Or just having someone who knows you're doing it and can check in that helps you stick with it.
Definitely.
Anything else?
Journaling. He really emphasizes writing about the experience. What comes up? Cravings, emotions, boredom.
Yeah.
But also, what do you find yourself doing instead? What simple things do you rediscover?
Capturing those insights.
Right. And crucially, he stresses that the detox day itself isn't the end game. It's about what happens after. You need to build new habits.
Ah, okay. So it's a catalyst for change, not just a one-off fix.
Yeah.
What kind of habits does he talk about?
Things like time blocking, scheduling specific chunks of time for focused work versus, say, checking email or social media. Practicing digital minimalism, being more conscious about what apps you use and why.
Be more intentional?
Exactly. Mindful consumption of media. Scheduling daily disconnection time, maybe the first hour of the day or before bed. And he has this interesting idea called pleasure stacking.
Pleasure stacking, what's that?
It's basically pairing something you need to do but maybe don't love with something you find enjoyable, like listening to a great podcast while doing chores or saving your favorite tea for when you sit down to do focused work. Makes the less appealing task feel better.
Those sound like solid practical strategies for maintaining focus beyond just the detox day. But surely people hit roadblocks, right? What challenges does Meurisse mention?
Oh yeah, definitely. Withdrawal is a big one. Feeling irritable, restless, anxious when you cut off the usual dopamine sources.
Well, his advice for that.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Expect it, know it's normal and temporary, and try to just observe the feeling without immediately reacting or giving in. Easier said than done sometimes.
I bet. What else? FOMO must be huge.
Fear of missing out, yeah. Huge. His suggestion is practical. Tell key people you'll be offline, maybe set up an emergency contact method if really needed, but otherwise, accept you'll catch up later.
Okay. And the big one, boredom.
Ah, boredom, the modern condition. Meurisse actually reframes it. He says boredom isn't the enemy. It's actually kind of essential for this recalibration process.
How so?
He argues that it's in those empty moments when you're not filling every second with stimulation that your brain gets a chance to reset. And often that's where creativity or clarity can emerge if you just sit with it.
So lean into the boredom instead of running from it. Interesting perspective. And he backs this up with more stories, right? Real results.
Yeah, he shares a few more case studies. A college student whose grades improved after starting regular detoxes, a writer who broke through writer's block, a parent who felt they had deeper connections with their kids after limiting their own screen use.
Those examples really help illustrate the potential impact he's talking about. Makes it feel more tangible.
Definitely. They're meant to be motivational,
Yeah.
showing what's possible.
Okay, so we've heard Maurice's perspective, the potential benefits, the how-tos, but we absolutely need to bring in the critical view, the scientific perspective. What do neuroscientists say about dopamine detox?
All right, this is crucial. Generally speaking, neuroscientists aren't big fans of the term dopamine detox. They find it a major oversimplification.
Why? Because dopamine does way more than just reward.
Exactly. It's involved in movement, motivation, learning, tons of stuff. The idea that you can just detox or reset it, like flushing a system, doesn't really capture the complexity of how these brain circuits work.
So the catchy name might not be scientifically accurate.
Pretty much. And the literature we reviewed backs this up. There isn't strong, direct scientific proof for the dopamine detox concept, as it's often presented. Plus, there are real concerns about the more extreme versions.
Like the intermediate or advanced levels Meurisse describes.
Potentially, yeah. Things like prolonged isolation or severe fasting could have negative effects. Loneliness, anxiety, even malnutrition if taken too far. That's a serious caution.
So balance is key. Extreme measures might backfire.
Absolutely. Some experts argue that the benefits people do report might just come from taking a break, breaking bad habits, reducing overstimulation in general, not necessarily from some specific change in dopamine levels themselves.
Just the act of stopping the noise gives your brain a breather.
Could be. And neurologists also warn against trying to mess with dopamine chemically without medical guidance. It's a delicate system. The research is still evolving, you know? The long-term effectiveness and the precise mechanisms are still up for debate.
Okay, so a healthy dose of skepticism about the name and the mechanism, but acknowledging that reducing overstimulation might still be beneficial. That makes me think. Are there other ways to get similar benefits? Maybe less extreme? Mindfulness comes to mind.
That's a great connection to make. The university study we looked at really highlighted how mindfulness practices can significantly improve focus, concentration, well-being, and help manage stress.
And mindfulness isn't about total withdrawal, is it? It's more about awareness within activity.
Exactly. It's about changing your relationship to your thoughts, feelings, and surroundings. The study mentions specific exercises like mindful eating, really paying attention to the food, body scans, noticing physical sensations, focusing on your breath.
Simple practices, but powerful.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Even short bursts of mindfulness training showed positive effects on attention, thinking skills, and mood. And interestingly, that review on dopamine fasting actually point out the parallels between its core ideas, being aware of yourself and your environment, and like ancient philosophies.
So this idea of intentional awareness isn't new.
Not at all. Mindfulness offers a path to similar outcomes, unplugging from distraction, being more present maybe without needing the full detox structure, especially the more restrictive levels.
It seems like whether you call it a detox or mindfulness, the underlying theme is about becoming more conscious, more intentional about where our attention goes.
I think that's a great way to summarize it. Both approaches push us to look at our relationship with stimulation and make deliberate choices.
Okay, this has been fascinating, really digging into Meurisse's book and the surrounding context. Let's try and crystallize some key takeaways for everyone listening.
Sure. So Meurisse presents the dopamine detox as a structured way to cut back on overstimulation, aiming to boost focus and regain control. He offers those 3 levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced.
Right. And his book suggests benefits like enjoying simple things more, better concentration. But, and this is a big but
the scientific community pushes back on the term dopamine detox itself, seeing it as an oversimplification. The actual brain mechanisms are way more complex.
So the research does seem to support the general idea that too much constant high-intensity stimulation isn't great for our focus or well-being. That desensitization idea has some traction.
Definitely. And a really key takeaway from the research is that this is super individual. There's no single right answer. What works wonders for one person might not work for another, or might even be detrimental.
You really have to consider your own situation, your health, what feels right for you.
Exactly. Listen to your own body and mind.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. Thinking about all this, the complexity of dopamine, the potential pluses of stepping back from intense stimulation, and the power of just being more mindful and aware, what's one small, sustainable experiment you could try? What little adjustment could help you cultivate a bit more focus, a bit more presence in your day-to-day?
Just reflect on what stood out to you from our chat today. How might it apply to your life?
Great food for thought. Thanks for diving deep with us today.